Speaking of getting things in yesterday's paper, that would be Troy Renck, who gets things in paper in the Denver Post every day of his life. And I talked to him briefly this morning. He is doing a great show with us here and on the Sports Show AM.
Yep, Troy Renck of the Denver Post, who covers the Broncos and the NFL, and he's joining us on Skype right now. What a beautiful picture, Troy.
Yeah, me, so it's not pretty, but it's working, I believe. I'm not seeing you guys, but I see myself.
You look great.
Yeah, I'm in casual Friday wear.
That's fine. Woody's and Paisley, so we're all good. Hey, Troy, you wrote this morning in the Denver Post that you believe the Broncos, in all probability, will look for a starting right tackle and probably in the first round of the draft. Do you have any names that the Broncos might be looking at right now?
Well, they'd love to get La'el Collins from LSU, but he probably won't be available. Eric Flowers from University of Miami, another ideal fit, probably won't be available. So that brings you to TJ Clemens. A little bit of a developmental project. He'd be available there because he hasn't played tackle a lot. He started his college career as a defensive end, switched over, and did remarkably well. So he's a guy to file away, a name. DJ Humphries, another kid to file away. My story, what I was fascinated by is you always hear guys say, well, draft a right or left tackle and plug them in for the next 10 years. That hasn't really been the case the last 5 to 7 years, that because of the pass-happy league and the matchups on the outside with edge rushers and left and right tackles, you've seen a lot of these young right tackles struggle. Jake Matthews, particularly last year, really struggled. Eric Fisher, the kid the Chiefs drafted, has really struggled. So kind of the thrust of the story, Les, is it's just not a certainty that, they'll draft a right tackle and he's going to start right away.
Well, Troy, you say they probably won't be able to get them, but that's assuming they're going to stay at number 28. This team has a lot of draft picks to play with now. They've got their own 6, and then they've got 4 compensatory picks. So who says that they can't package some of those picks and move up in the first round and get one of those guys you're talking about?
Well, they can't trade the compensatory picks, and they really got jobbed by having to get, 3 seventh-round compensatory picks. Those aren't great. You have basically 3 Mr. Irrelevance. That's not going to help them in packaging. But they don't have to stay there. You're right, Les. And maybe they move up for Collins, which would be a great move. They haven't given up on Michael Schofield. I just talked to Michael about his prospects for next year. I'll be writing about it early next week in the Denver Post, that he's a guy that could be back on the radar. He didn't suit once last year as a third-round pick. And the switch to the zone blocking offense should help him tremendously.
Well, speaking of, you say plug guys in for 10 years, but he didn't play last year. A guy being penciled in lightly at center is Paradis, who was even cut by this team, if I remember correctly, and was kind of brought back to the practice squad. Based on what we're hearing and what you guys are writing, you and Mike Kliss, that those 2 guys are going to be dependent on to be on this team and contributing.
Yeah, Gary Kubiak has gone out of his way, Woody, to really talk up Matt Paradis and even mention him in the same vein as Tom Nalen. Here's a guy that was on the practice squad in Nalen, and look what his career came. He's not saying he's Nalen, but he used it as an example of a guy who learned at basically a redshirt year on the practice squad who could benefit from that and make these. Gary Kubiak keeps saying these guys can make these huge leaps from year 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. Well, in Schofield, Latimer, Paradis, they've got 3 guys specifically that they need to see take big jumps. I mean, those guys did not contribute at all last year, and they're counting on Gary Kubiak's staff to develop some of these young players that kind of fell by the wayside last year.
I want them to take a look at Jonathan Martin, and you obviously know his history, and I think because of Elway's ties to Stanford that he would know more about the guy's background than anybody. Do you think it's a good idea, or do you disagree, to bring him in and talk to him and take a look at him and see if here's the guy who was a second-round draft choice and was considered a pretty good offensive lineman until all the garbage happened in Miami?
Yeah, the Miami story was unfortunate, and he went through something awful there that clearly has not helped his career in any way. The issue I have with Martin has really nothing to do with the bullying issue and whether the NFL characterizes him a certain way or stereotypes him based on how that went down. The reality is, can he still play? Is he an NFL player? He's had 2 chances now. Hasn't played particularly well. He needs to get with a coach that trusts him, and John Harbaugh would know him through his brother Jim, and maybe Pagano, Indianapolis. if the Broncos were to take a look, I have no issue with that. But at this point, the issue isn't so much what he went through, Woody, but who is he as a player? Is he an upgrade over Schofield? Do you want to take reps away from Schofield for Martin? That I don't know. I just know that last year he didn't play well. And that's the concerning issue is you want to see him have a make good season and rebound, but he's got to be able to play. And so far he hasn't shown he's an NFL tackle.
When you go to buy a car, what do you really want? You probably want a lot of cars to choose from. And you want the dealership's best price. Not some starting price or target price, the best price. And you want it immediately, not after hours of negotiating. And you want a salesperson who doesn't get paid more if you spend more. Because, well, you don't want to spend more. Well, you're in luck. John Elway wants all of those things too. Better yet, John Elway wants you to have all of those things too. Come see us or click on elwaydealers.com.